Democratic leadership, once again, is showing us just how pathetic they really are as they work to literally block one of the most important resolutions that's being proposed by a fellow Democrat, Congressman Ro Khanna. Now, it's not just Ro Khanna. Congressman Thomas Massie, who is a Republican, libertarian really, has co-sponsored this resolution alongside Ro Khanna to ensure that the president of the United States cannot unilaterally decide to pursue military action without congressional approval. This is the way a system of checks and balances is supposed to work. And for everything that we hear from people like Chuck Schumer about how terrible it is that all this power is now concentrated in the executive branch, to me, it really appears as though he's one of the individuals who's trying to defeat this. And honestly, it seems like he's also a little excited about the prospect of going to war with Iran. You can judge for yourselves as I give you the details. Now, the resolution in question would again require explicit congressional authorization for any military action against Iran. I usually don't ask you to do this. I usually think that it's a fruitless effort. However, please hit up your congressperson and ask them to vote in favor of this resolution. Demand that it be brought to a vote. I don't know what's going to happen in the Senate, but at least in the House, try to push for it. Try to push for it in the Senate. Call your senators, call your representatives. But nonetheless, it would require every member of Congress to go on the record, okay, about a potential US war with Iran, which is something that many Democrats do not want to do. They do not want to be on the record supporting something that President Donald Trump obviously wants to do, which is engage in, military intervention in a foreign country on behalf of Israel. So make them go on the record. Now, they're trying to undercut Khanna and Massie's effort, and this is how they're going to do it. Now, this is a great report by Ida Chavez. She writes over at Substack. Previously, she was over at The Intercept, but here's what she says. A top Democratic House Foreign Affairs Committee staffer, multiple sources with direct knowledge tell me, deliberately inflated projections of opposition to the bipartisan measure, warning of 20 to 40 Democratic defections as part of a broader effort to dampen momentum and prevent the Iran war powers vote from advancing. Now, look, the word inflated or inflation, when it comes to those 20 to 40 Democratic people defecting from what Ro Khanna is trying to do here, I don't even know if it's really the right word. I would not be surprised, I gotta be honest with you, considering the fact that we have donors buying politicians on both sides of the political aisle. It would not surprise me at all if 20 to 40 Democrats would defect and would not sign on to this resolution. And that's a really sad realization that I came to a long time ago when it came to the Democratic Party. Yes, there are differences between the two parties when it comes to a whole host of social issues. They love the culture wars because that's where they can give this illusion of we're different from each other. The Democrats and Republicans couldn't be more different. But when it comes to neoconservative foreign policy, when it comes to neoliberal economic policy, they jump in it. Both parties seem to be in cahoots for the large part, right? But there's always like the few outliers who are fighting for the right things. And in this case, you have Ro Khanna fighting for the right thing. You have Thomas Massie, a registered Republican, fighting for the right thing. Now, Khanna and Massie had initially planned to force a vote on this resolution this week, but now Democratic leadership, don't we love Democratic leadership, is saying that they expect the vote to be delayed until next week. Or, maybe even a little later than that, Maybe we push it back a little later until people forget about it. Now, a senior Democratic congressional staffer told me, meaning Ida, the reporter for the story, told me it's pretty clear Democratic leadership is working to delay or potentially sideline the vote on the Khanna-Massie war powers resolution. If you've been around the Hill, this is a familiar playbook. It is a familiar playbook, actually. And if these politicians are frustrated with the fact that the American people no longer believe in our institutions, this is precisely the reason why. If you are not working on behalf of the American people, 80% of whom do not want to go to war with Iran, then what are you even doing? Enriching yourself in Congress, engaging in insider trading? We've got no use for you. But I continue, the staffer who works on foreign policy issues explains that leadership rarely comes out and says they oppose these votes outright because they know the underlying issue is popular with the base. And I don't want to just focus on the Democratic base here, because if you look at how independent voters feel about this issue, they overwhelmingly support a system where Congress has to give approval before the executive branch launches military intervention or war. Instead, you see process concerns, timing objections, and caucus unity arguments used to slow things down or keep members off the record. We've seen the same approach on past war powers votes and foreign policy amendments that clash with the national security elite consensus. So the national security elite need to be dismantled and kicked out of our government. These are the unelected careerists who don't ever have to be accountable to us. Some refer to them as the so-called deep state. And these are the people who have destroyed our country and have dragged us into wars that we should not have been involved in. So while these operatives of Democratic leadership are trying to basically paint this resolution as, get a load of this, divisive. They think the resolution is divisive. They think the system of checks and balances is divisive. Okay, by the way, this is the party that wanted to save democracy. They say it's divisive among the party. Advocacy groups are convinced that most Democrats would in fact vote in favor of it. And you know what? If those advocacy groups believe it, they should put it up for a vote. Let's see if the proof is in the pudding, right? Now, a spokesperson for J Street, which is, they're basically liberal Zionists who allegedly are against going to war with Iran. I'll just leave it there. Here's what they say. We're thinking there will likely be fewer defections than what the HFAC staffer predicted. What we are hearing is that more and more members are committing to support the war powers resolution due to Trump's inching toward war. Okay, so an organizer at another advocacy group opposing strikes against Iran said the following. Leadership will always bluff to try to scare the sponsors from calling the vote. In reality, Representatives Jared Moskowitz and Josh Gottheimer are likely to be quite lonely. Naming some names.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile is saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
But look, we've talked about those two earlier in the show. They have already signaled that they intend to vote against the resolution because they want the war with Iran. Now, when Dropsite News spoke to multiple Democratic lawmakers on the Hill about whether or not they would vote in favor of the resolution, they were tepidly supportive, but maybe that's my spin on it, right? Like, I want you guys to think for yourselves. So take a look at this video, decide what you think.
How do you plan to vote on Representative Khanna and Representative Massey's war powers resolution?
Well, I intend to read it first. It deals with Iran, right?
Yeah.
I think Iran is certainly subject to a war powers action by the Congress.
How do you plan to vote on the war powers resolution introduced by Representative Khanna and Massey?
Well, we're not certain when that's going to come up. And so we're watching that. But I have deep concerns about the way that the legislative branch has handed over its constitutional responsibilities through the years.
Well, I don't believe that we should be going to war with Iran. And so I think that obviously, look, I have enormous respect for Representative both Khanna and Massey on this. And I think that the important thing at this moment is there's two things I think are really critical. One is what's happening on the ground. Like, we should be obviously supported. I mean, there's real harm happening to people, and there are folks that are demanding rights, and we should always uplift that and recognize that we should be supporting folks on the ground when we can. At the same time, this idea that we're just going to go into war with Iran is, again, just part of Donald Trump's agenda to enact whatever he wants, wherever he wants.
Okay, So let me just start with Garcia and his. We gotta help them. The protesters. We're so concerned about the protesters, the way they're being treated. Okay, nonsense. That argument makes no sense when you consider the fact that helping them in this context would mean bombing the crap out of Iran. Is that going to help the Iranians? And is it really up to the United States to carry that out? Why is it our responsibility to carry that out? I don't think it is. I don't think it's our responsibility at all. And this is not in any way, shape, or form about helping protesters in Iran. This is about regime change. It's not even about weapons. At the end of the day, Israel and Netanyahu in particular, for decades has been calling for regime change war against Iran. So please spare me the fake concern from our politicians about the people of Iran. They don't even care about us. So if you think I'm gonna believe for a second that our politicians give a damn about people in any other country, with the exception of Israel, they do care about the people of Israel, probably more than anyone else. You're not gonna convince me, I'm sorry. And by the way, Robert Garcia, Congressman Papas, Papas. It doesn't matter what kind of impending war we're talking about, right? Take Iran out of it for a second. Congress is part of this crazy political system that the founders of our Constitution thought up. It's the system of checks and balances. So we don't live under a king who gets to decide everything without approval from another branch of government. In this case, it would be Congress. So whether you're talking about impending war with Iran, whether you're talking about, striking Russia, I don't know, anything, make it up. There should always be congressional approval. The idea that Congress would cede power to the executive branch in this regard is just a show, a sign of their cowardice. Because at the end of the day, these lawmakers want the war. They don't want to be on the record saying that they are against it. That's what's really going on here. They're so cowardly that they will literally cede their power to the executive branch so they don't have to be on the record supporting a war that is deeply, deeply unpopular. Now, the three top Democrats on the House Foreign Affairs, Armed Services, and Intelligence committees also issued a joint statement on Friday saying that Trump needed to seek congressional authorization before taking military action. Now, look, it's one thing to we're gonna put out a statement. We're gonna send Trump a letter. Okay, great, send him a letter, but then you've got to put some action behind it, right? But while individual members are supportive of this resolution in theory, on the surface, that's what you see. Sources say that Hakeem Jeffries isn't really buying it. He's not really making an attempt to whip more votes for this effort, which doesn't surprise me. So as an organizer explains, Democratic leadership is putting in about as much energy into stopping this war as they did into pressuring Biden to rejoin the JCPOA. That was the Iran nuclear deal, which is to say almost zero. It's obvious they're not going to fight to protect Iranian lives if that means helping Trump avoid a war that will crater his popularity. And that's like the real reason why there's this internal effort among the Democrats to sabotage the War Powers Act. And that's disgraceful. Look, I know that the popularity of the Democratic Party is rising at the moment, specifically because of the fact that the Trump administration, in the second term especially, has been so disastrous. But don't let the Democrats win by default. They have to show us that they are willing to do the right thing. Now, Ro Khanna, who again, I've grown a tremendous amount of respect for in recent months, is not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk, and he deserves credit for that. But someone as popular as Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? If she really wants to show her foreign policy, bona fides and do something, she could do something here. She could make a big deal about this. Every time she speaks, people listen. Every time she has a call to action, her supporters will spring into action. So she should use the bully pulpit to promote and pressure Democratic leadership to push for a vote on the War Powers Act. I'm not gonna hold my breath, but I would love if she surprised me on this. Now, with that in mind, The political calculation was made apparent during a conversation that took place just last June between senior foreign policy aide to Chuck Schumer and a top official in the organization that opposes the Iran strikes. So Dropsite News reported on what happened. Get a load of this. So in June of 2025, at the same time Trump was floating the possibility of striking against Iran, he spoke positively about encouraging progress in ongoing nuclear talks. Nice, suggesting that if a deal was met, those strikes would be off. Schumer responded by mocking the president as Taco Trump, meaning Trump always chickens out. Okay. That's not where you mock Trump. Okay, that's one of the rare instances where you, as a Democrat, as Democratic leadership, applaud Trump and try to encourage him to go in the direction of peace. Instead, Schumer, who very clearly wants this war, is like, oh yeah, I'm in high school or middle school. I'm gonna call you a chicken. We want war. Embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. So more than 24 organizations sent a letter asking Schumer to delete that video and just give Trump the opportunity to reach a diplomatic solution. So that letter led to a phone call between one of the letter's organizers and top foreign policy aide to Schumer. Okay, so the foreign policy aide, whom Dropsite agreed not to name, explained that a substantial number of Senate Democrats believed Iran ultimately needed to be dealt with militarily. I'm just gonna pause to calm down before I read the rest of that. But those Democrats, the aide explained, also understood that going to war again in the Middle East would be a political catastrophe. That's precisely why they wanted Trump to be the one to do it. The hope was that Iran would take a blow, and so would Trump. A win-win for Democrats, absolute cowards. So they want the war, number one. And they want that cherry on top of Trump being harmed politically and the Republican Party being harmed politically by engaging in a deeply unpopular war that the American people do not want. Now, hilariously, the aide claimed at the time that Schumer did not share those views and actually opposed war with Iran. We can just pause to laugh for a second. But that same aide has taken at least 2 trips to Israel in the past few years, paid for by AIPAC's education arm. Anyone who takes those trips, super sus. Contacted by Dropsite, a Schumer spokesperson rejected that characterization of the call, asserting Leader Schumer's long-standing support for a diplomatic solution as the best solution to Iran's nefarious actions. He should say that then publicly, rather than hear from a Schumer spokesperson. I want to hear him vociferously speak out against striking Iran. But of course, he won't do that. Less than 2 weeks later, he made that taco video that Trump, 2 weeks after he made that taco video, Trump struck Iran's nuclear facilities and Schumer did what? He justified it. He said in a statement at the time, quote, I have long said that Israel has a right to defend itself. Let's pause. This is about Israel? This is about Israel, right? Like the admission is right there. Iran is not a threat to the United States. They were nowhere near building nuclear weapons. They had enriched uranium to 60%, but still didn't even have the capacity to build the bomb. The uranium wasn't enriched to 90%, which is what's necessary to build a nuclear bomb. We have obliterated their nuclear site. So we're not worried about Iran having nuclear weapons, number one. Number two, their ballistic missiles, which Israel is making a big deal about, could strike Israel, that's for sure. And I think Iran should have that capability of self-defense. They don't have the capacity to strike the United States. So why do we care about going to war with Iran, a country of 92 million people, a war that could spin out of control and become a regional war? What are we doing here? But I'll continue with the rest of Schumer's statement. I have long said that Israel has the right to defend itself and that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Ensuring they never obtain one must remain a top national security priority. I disagree. I think it's actually a national security issue that Iran at this point doesn't have a deterrent. Because if they did have a deterrent, we wouldn't be dragged into a war that our soldiers would be forced to fight, that our country would be forced to pay for further drowning us into debt when we're already $40 trillion in debt. These people do not care about us. Chuck Schumer is like 100 years old. He's dead soon. And I'm not saying that to make fun of him. It's just facts of life. But we will remain here dealing with the consequences and the aftermath of the destruction these lawmakers have brought upon us. I just want you to know that. And now, as Trump barrels the United States toward more war with Iran, of course, Democratic leadership is largely quiet and is actively trying to undercut efforts to rein in the president. So I'm sure it has nothing to do with this. Let's take a look at this next graphic. Oh wow, would you look at that? That's quite a bit of money. It's quite a bit of money. Almost $6.5 million Chuck Schumer has taken from AIPAC. So he knows where his bread is buttered. And if it means destroying the future of this country, he'll do it if the price is right.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.